Hello, welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm the founder and CEO of the Bobby White Foundation. I'm your host, along with my co-host and dear friend.
And I am Bonnie Snyder.
How's everything going today?
Good. No, not bad at all.
Good.
Not bad at all.
Well, first off, we again want to thank WeBeam TV for allowing us this platform to bring information and talk openly about a very difficult subject. And also, again, we did partner with Kindness, so if you want to help support the program, you can go to our page on Kindness, and there's many levels of donation availability, whatever you feel comfortable with. And also for the month of March, Greg Schindler's State Farm office is doing a fundraiser drive for the foundation. And all you need to do is call their office and get an insurance quote. You don't have to purchase it, but I'm sure he would appreciate it if you did. But with every insurance quote, they're going to make a donation to the foundation for the show. So that would be much appreciated too. And again, that runs through the rest of this month.
And as always, we continue to, thank those of y'all that continue to support the show, and tune in every week to, listen to, the topics that we have going, or, whether it is, a discussion that Tammy and I are having, or any one of our, amazing guests that have come on thus far. So yeah, please, we, continue to thank you for your support and continued support.
Yeah. And we do have a good lineup of guests coming on here
Yes,
in the
we
near
do.
future. So I'm kind of excited about that too. So last week we were trying to get through the last two chapters of this book. And of course we run out of time as we usually do. So today we want to finish up this book, and I have read this several times. It's a short book. It's an easy read, and I pick things out every single time, especially with the subject of suicide. You don't grasp it all at once, and also at different stages where you're at, depending on that time, different things come out or pop out that really can resonate with you. So,
And you're right, Tammy. It is an extremely easy read. And although the subject of the book is suicide grief, it is so applicable to any grief.
it
So
is.
the way he's written this was just brilliant. Yeah, I like you, read the book. I'm like, I could not put this down. And although I have the dual, Aiden's suicide, Patrick's, the way Patrick's death was, I could apply this either way.
Yes. Oh, most definitely. Any, especially any tragic,
Any loss.
any loss. Yeah, most definitely. And he does have, he this Dr. Wolfelt is he's a prolific writer on the subject of grief, and he does have several other books pertaining to particular types of grief, such as suicide just happens to be one of them. And I've read several books. We have several books in our library for the foundation, and I think it's just the way he writes it resonates with me, and that's why I wanted to feature his books on here.
Yeah, and you're right. In the way he, wrote this book, I find often times, when we look at, resources for lost survivors, and it's read this book. I find, people who are at, that master's, PhD, PhD level, right at the PhD level.
Right.
Not that I'm minimizing, the distinction of being at the PhD level, mind you. However, I like that he writes this in such a way that his target audience are lay people, people not in the field, people who don't have, who may not have that level of education. So it is written like he's speaking to his audience, which makes, his books very difficult to put down.
Right. Well, and two, he comes from it from a lived experience also. He lost his best friend. I'm thinking back in, I can't remember, is it the 90s, the 80s. He was a doctor, and he took his life. And so he comes from it from a lived experience also. So I think that makes a bit of a difference too.
Absolutely.
So this last chapter is appreciate your transformation. And ironically, I kind of feel like I'm going through that right now. Or I don't know if I'm going through it, and then sometimes I think I'm trying to go through it. But I'm trying to go through it like kind of naturally. And sometimes I question myself about it. I don't know why. But he says, there's a quote in here by Werner von Braun, nature does not know extinction. All it knows is transformation.
That's powerful.
And those of us that go through suicide loss, it can take years for that to happen. It's not something that happens overnight. Here in a couple of weeks, we're going to be upon the 5th anniversary of my husband's death. And it's been a hell of a journey. And it will continue to be. It will continue to be. And I'm definitely not the same person I was 5 years ago.
And I think when I heard you say, I'm kind of there, I think I'm there, I'm not sure if I'm there, I'm just going to let it happen naturally. What we don't realize is, from a processing piece, is we are going through this journey. What becomes different is that there are times that we are more acutely aware of where we are on the journey. And there are other times where this process is happening, and for some reason, life is happening, and we're not as focused on the transformation as we are when we're in those other quiet moments when, our lost loved ones are, as Patrick used to say, this is heavy on my head today.
Mm-hmm.
Something is really heavy on my head today. Well, let's talk about this. And, I know I find there are times where I go through the day and I don't, at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, not that I didn't feel, or that I'm always conscious, aware of, Patrick and Aiden's loss, mind you. It's not as to the forefront of my thoughts as other days. And it's at those times also that I find myself, and I'm sure, you and others, on this similar journey, did I just do my loved one a disservice, or disrespect, or make them insignificant because I didn't think of them as deeply today as, say, I did, when the loss was brand new. And so understanding this transformation, sometimes we recognize it because we're laser focused on it. Other times we don't recognize it because for those moments or it's during those moments that we've allowed ourselves to resort to a semblance of normal that existed prior to the loss.
I find myself I think more these days as trying to do some of those things that was normal back then.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's more like with work. And I have found myself more and more like getting back into the groove of, what I really enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes your mind away. But I find myself at the end when I accomplish something, I'm like, hey, you'd be proud of me for this. So I kind of look at it kind of like at the you'd be proud instead of, oh, I'm sorry I didn't, I was happy or whatever. I find myself doing that more and more. you know
Yeah, I think it's a process that we all do. Like when I think of, here we are, in the, during this pandemic, and, what is it called? The coronavirus. And, throughout the past year, there were periods of times when I found myself um, allowing myself to have, a moment of, laughter, chuckle, as Patrick's favorite drink was Corona. He has a pair, I still have them. He has a pair of socks that are Corona, has a Corona logo on it. There's a t-shirt with the Corona logo on it. It's a pair of cards or a deck of cards that has the Corona label on it.
Geez.
And I posted something on my social media page this past week where, it's called My Little Monkey. So he has his monkey glasses on, and he's holding a bottle of something. But I find myself, if he were here, I wonder what he would say. How he would have us all in stitches.
Oh yeah, I could
Over
imagine.
this pandemic and being quarantined, and the fact that it's called Corona.
Right.
Um, or, like we said, St. Patrick's Day, where, he, made sure this is my day.
Right.
This is my day. It, it is during, those times that, at least for me, I, have allowed myself to smile and remember how he used to make us all smile. While at the same time, I wish you were still here.
Right. Oh yeah, you always do that. I do the same thing. Even in the same sentence, you'd be really proud of what I just accomplished. But I really wish you were here to see it in person. Be here to experience it with me physically. So the journey through grief. He says here, the journey through grief that follows the death of someone precious to suicide is life-changing. And we all know that. My life is maybe some semblance of what it used to be, but not a whole lot. And I have said from the beginning, I am a different person. I guess there is parts of me that is kind of still the same, but it is, something like this is life-changing. But you do grow as a result of going through an event like this, and it's not something to avoid. You need to experience it.
Absolutely.
But growth means change. And we are going through a life of change, and a lot of people with this past year have been dealing with that in a way because of the pandemic that we're going through. I think a lot of people out there, even without something as tragic as this, but dealing with the virus, the horrible number of deaths, still are going through something similar to what we've been going through. Somebody asked me at the beginning of the pandemic, how I was doing or dealing with it. Mm-hmm. And at that time it's no different for me than it's been the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think more people are feeling more the way I feel for a different reason. Mm-hmm. And especially for as long as it's gone on. And the isolation. that people have felt.
Yeah, and I like what he says here, where I come to believe that our greatest gifts comes from wounds. But then he goes on to say that these are not wounds that we, purposely set out to inflict, to be inflicted with. Some people are into pain. Leo, so let me, it's like, I like, give me pain, give me pain. But this is not a pain that, we're like, give me this. I'm quite sure you didn't say,
Oh.
hey, Bobby,
Oh, yeah,
take your
yeah.
life
No,
here.
this is a pain that I could have lived without.
But he does bring up a really good point, because there is, tremendous truth in the fact that, pain by default forces us to heal. Pain by default forces us to, um, what's the word I want? Seek out and grasp a hold to, those coping skills that we use to deal with whatever is, whatever we're dealing with. Um, you know, to do a comparison, if I have a headache, it's like, oh my, what's my coping skill? Let me go grab, a Tylenol or an Advil or a Lever, something like that, to something to take this pain away. There's nothing, like tangible, that we can say, let me take this to deal with the pain that I'm feeling in my heart right now because of this loss. And so it becomes necessary for us to, and I don't say us, for folks dealing with loss, to either, look back, go into those memory banks, that we have stored in our brain somewhere. Okay, so the last time I dealt with a loss, how did I get through it? And either take that coping skill and deal with, and use it now and just deal with it. Use it now. In some cases, it also becomes necessary to, okay, this coping skill worked for this loss. How come it's not working for this loss? And in the case of death, if I were to do like a comparison, losing my grandparents, those are, two of the most important people in my life. Processing their loss, or losing them, very, very different than processing, the loss of Aiden, which is very, very different than processing the loss of Patrick. And, again, people look at, but it's a loss. You should go, it works like this. I was in a conversation with another family member who, it's like, glad you can do it. I could not. But it was, death happened. All right, so we processed the death. Planning of the service happened. Okay, we got through that. We had the service. Once the service was over, it was like closing the book. Okay, this is over here now.
Yeah, I can't do that either. And you're right. Processing the death of my first husband, which was 33 years ago, taking him to work one day and never seeing him again was, it was tragic. I was 26 years old, but it's much, much different processing the death of Bobby by suicide. And particularly when I was the one who found him. You can't even compare.
Well, no, and I think, it's
You know,
important that, folks understand that even though the common denominator is a death,
a tragic loss.
Yeah. In some cases, it doesn't even have to be a tragic loss.
Right.
Okay, in my grandfather's case, for example, he was old. He was ill. We knew it was going to happen. Or other family, a favorite, one of my favorite uncles. He had cancer, throat cancer, and within a month, kind of like less than a month, he was gone.
Oh, wow.
And so when we look at, all right, so we know this is terminal. It's going to result in a death. It doesn't make the death that much easier. what becomes different is how we process it. Because in the case of my grandfather, my Uncle Dave, um, my cousin, we knew those deaths were inevitable.
Right.
Each one of them were, you know, under hospice care, or we knew they were in the end of life. When you have a death like Bobby, Aiden, or Patrick, one that we did not see coming, it's, yeah, they're gone. That, processing to get through it, totally different.
Absolutely, yeah, because you're blindsided by it. It's not, it's not something you foresaw coming.
And the other
And
thing
it's just-
too is it doesn't matter, let's just say in a family unit. And again, I'm sure this is true in your family as well. Everybody experiences the loss of, in your case, Bobby, and in our family, Aiden and Patrick. This person over here, it's like, how did you get over this loss so quickly? Or the appearances, you got over this really quick, you're fine. Whatever fine means.
Right.
This person right here is still in the throes of grief, as if it still happened yesterday. This person over here may be, again, it's just another day, it's just another day.
Right.
Or you have
Yeah.
others, and I'll put myself in this category. Some days I'm, again, I hate that word, fine. Sometimes, some days I'm okay. There are other days that it's like, I can't believe, did this really?
And I got to get up again and do
Yeah.
it all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because everybody in our family has processed Bobby's death differently, and I see it particularly in his siblings. He has a older brother and 2 younger sisters, and all 3 of them are either have or are still processing it much different than the other.
I saw a friend of mine had posted something. We share things back and forth between the two of us. Commonality. She lost her daughter a few months, maybe 6 months, give or take. Either right before Aiden or right before Patrick. But in that same, in a similar time frame. And it had to be before Aiden, because when I went for her high school reunion, she'd indicated she couldn't go because they were going to take her daughter's ashes to, and sprinkle them in some of her favorite places, the final leg being the Grand Canyon. But my brain just suited. The meme that she sent me said, if you don't understand the grief that someone is going through, be grateful that you don't understand the grief.
Yeah, I've seen that before too.
Or consider
Yeah.
yourself fortunate that you don't understand.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
words to
something
that
like that.
effect.
Right. Yeah,
And I remember
I've
the
seen that.
first time I saw that, I had to read it a couple of times. If you don't understand why a person is grieving so long,
And
be
so
grateful.
hard.
Yeah, be grateful that
grateful.
you don't understand.
Right. I have seen that before, and that is true. You don't want to do this, But
I think it's inevitable that at some point in your life, you are going to have to endure or process a loss. Yeah, because there are certain things in life are certain.
yeah, that's
Death and taxes.
that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. It's something that the human experience you can't get away from.
Right.
And you're right. At some point, you are going to experience a tremendous loss. resulting in tremendous grief.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be suicide.
No, it doesn't. It
You know.
doesn't.
But we continue with our transformation as we, go through this journey. I marked a passage that he wrote here with a star, so it must have meant something really good when I read it. Every loss in life calls out for a new search for meaning, including a natural struggle with spiritual concerns, often transforming your vision of your God and your faith life. And, we had on here a couple weeks ago your friend
Greg and Jennifer?
Greg and Jennifer,
Mhm.
yeah. And we really had a really long discussion and kind of dug deep into that. And I think I was reading this like at the time when they were on, and I think that that happens for a lot of people. Either you question it, or you dig deeper into it.
Mhm. I like what he says here too. Also, that along with that, you may discover that you have developed new attitudes, and along with that, whether it is the attitude of questioning more, where you did not question before,
Mm-hmm.
or some things you are, more sensitive to, and some things you are not as sensitive to, or like, now I have this suit of armor because I don't want to break down, which makes me think of something I saw recently, where it talked about, and I hear this a lot. You have got to be the strongest person that
Yeah,
I've
I
ever met.
I get that
And
too,
they
yeah.
look at, losing Aiden, losing Patrick, and then, this year, in a weekend, it was back-to-back family, like, that
You
weekend,
did have, yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I lost a family member on a Friday to turn around, to lose a, good friend on Saturday and another family member on that Sunday. And I remember, looking up and saying, all right, Lord, what's going on here? Again, someone looked at me, you are the strongest person that I know. I don't understand how you do it. And this post or meme that I saw was, um, it always amazes me when people say, you're a strong person. But you don't realize it's because I had to, or because I did not have a choice.
Right.
Or this is not something that I chose to do. Not minimizing, when people ask me, define your quality, what are your qualities? I always throw, resiliency and strength in there. So like I said, I don't want to minimize having those qualities, because they are what has gotten me through a lot of this, no, I'm not going to find myself in a corner somewhere, crumpled up, ball. Although I have curled up on my couch, and bawled my eyes out because I allowed myself to do that. At the same time, I can feel what, process what I have to process, um, while at the same time, um, also being mindful of, you know, I still have, you know, and I say, two biological living children, not to
Mhm.
mention all of the other, non-biological adopted adult children that I
Right.
have. I still have, other grandchildren. I still have, an 11-year-old that, my daughter and I, are, sharing custody of and getting him through, losing the one parent that has been his parent his entire life. Um, along with, everything else that goes with that. So yeah, we don't have the luxury sometimes of, just crawling up in a ball and letting the world, cease
No,
to
you
exist.
you actually you're right. It's not something that we asked for, but you you don't have a choice when you're put in the situation. You you do what you have to survive, and to push forward. Was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about stuff on this similar line, and that God never gives you any more than you can handle.
Yes.
And and it's like, okay, I don't want to be a hog. We can share this with other people. I don't need to handle any more stuff. Let other people have the spiritual experience.
I used to say, when people were, and I grew up on that phrase, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. And there are times where, when something else is being heaped on, I look and I said, not that I call God dude, but, but sometimes I'm like, this dude must think, or he must know something and I not know that, these shoulders are made out of titanium steel or something. It's like, all right, I agree, I understand you. Sometimes I'm like, well, Lord, if, what you're heaping on me, you're not giving me more than I can bear. You're telling me that these are titanium steel. The next time I go to the gym, will you let me see that I can lift more than what I'm lifting or something like that. But, but it's true, we, in the deaths, again, whether it is, death by suicide, a death by overdose, a natural, caused death, a death by a crash. We didn't have a choice in that. It's not like we said, today I think I want so-and-so to leave this earth. No, none of us are going to do that. You can go now.
Yeah.
That's,
No.
that's not going to happen.
I don't know. There may be some of those people. But no.
What we do have a choice, however, is how we deal with and process the loss. We can stay wallowed in, the sorrow and the grief and, the loss in itself, the pity, it was like, don't get me, I don't want to be, get off your pity pot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, is it a pity pot that I'm on, or am I processing? Because that I have heard, from certain people in this transformation. You're on a pity, you're on a pity party. It's time to cancel, that party.
Yeah, I've had people say that, it's time you need to get over it. Well, that's not how it works.
Right.
And
No, it's not.
that's not how it works for me. Maybe that works great for you, but that's not how it works for me. This is, you just don't love and live with somebody for 30 years and get over it in a couple of years.
Well, you don't love and have given birth to somebody that you've had
Exactly.
in your life for 33 years, or you don't love someone that, I always look at my grandchildren, it's like by default I gave birth to you. I gave birth to your parents, and if I didn't give birth to your parents, you by default
Right.
wouldn't be here. But whether it is, 30 years with Bobby, the 33 years I had with Patrick, the 14 years I had with Aiden.
Right.
That is not it's not like a light switch.
No.
Which is why, again, how, Dr. Wolfelt, skillfully, not only, laid out the touchstones, but the Bill of Rights at the same time, to let people know, hey, this journey is different for everybody. This journey, may be different for us as individuals. No matter how many times we experience a loss, because again,
That's
my
true.
journey after losing Aiden is very different than my journey after losing Patrick.
Right.
Doesn't mean that one was more significant than the other, or I loved one more than the other, or because Patrick lived at home and Aiden was, 1,200 miles away. No, it is, for whatever reason, would not be surprised to have someone look at me and say, Bonnie, what were the differences? How come, with, Aiden, you did this, or with Patrick, you did this, or with your grandparents, you did this, but with your uncle, you did this. I don't have the answer. It's just because that's how it. That's
It's
how
just
it
the way the
happened.
process works.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it is. It's different for every loss. Yeah, because I even remember when I lost my grandma, and she it was years ago, and she she didn't want to go. She was afraid,
Hmm.
you know. But it was her time. She was 88, and I remember, and it was hard going through those last few days,
Hmm.
even though I wasn't physically with her. She was out in Oregon, and of
Hmm.
course I was down here. But the night before she passed away, my cousin would put her cell phone up to my grandma's ear, and I would talk to her. And that last night, I told her that it was okay to go, and that Bobby would take really good care of me, but it was okay. And she ended up passing away just a few hours later.
Yeah.
And in those, like I said, those few days prior to, it was kind of agonizing because you you knew that her life was over, but she was fighting it, but she could no longer stay on this earth.
You know,
And it was almost a relief, even
yes.
though I miss. She has always been an advocate for me my entire life, and to lose that person, but it was almost a relief because to me she was free.
I look at it as sometimes, in those instances where, it's an expected death, the death of some,
Hmm.
an elderly person. Um, you know, I will, um, share, similar to your experience with your grandmother, mine with my grandfather. I was in Germany, and, I remember, getting letters, or talking to my mom, and calling from Germany is like ultra expensive. But letters going back and forth between my family, oh, we thought this was it, we thought this was it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is the man who raised me, my early years of my life, he and my grandma. But I remember going home, on leave. This was, prior to his death. And, walking in the house and, hey, I'm home. And his face lit up. He was sitting in his favorite recliner, his face lit up. And I remember my grandmother telling me later on in the day, she goes, I haven't seen his face that bright in, quite some time. And anyway, I remember as my parents were, taking me back to, the Air Force Base to, go back to Germany. I remember my mom, was like, what's the matter? And I said, I fear the next time I come back home, it's going to be because he's gone. And it was, I'd say roughly 10 days later, I got the phone call. They thought they were going to, like us, the Red Cross notifies, service members, there's a
Right.
death in the family, or they have to verify it. And I remember my first sergeant, coming in, they were like, oh, I went away for the weekend. Like, oh, they've been looking for you. The first sergeant says, we have to keep you here in the barracks until he gets here. My brain immediately went to, I know what he was coming to tell me. And, he walked in the door, and I'm looking at him. And, I shouldn't share this. I wasn't really a fan of this particular first sergeant. But, as he walks in the door, I'm looking at him, and here he started to open his mouth, and I said, I don't care what we have to do, but I need you to make sure that I am on the first thing cooking out of Frankfurt. And I said, because I know you're going to tell me my grandfather's gone. And, because my grandparents raised me, it was deemed local parentis, so yes, I
Right.
had to go, It's like, there was no question as to whether, like they weren't going to fight me in terms of, well, it's, we have to, we really don't have to let you go because it was a grandparent. It's not like it was a parent. I'm going for this. Not that I would go AWOL, but, it was, I'm going for this, I'm going to be AWOL. Again, of course, I wouldn't go AWOL, but in processing his death, that, I don't want to say it was easier because I was prepared for it.
Hmm.
Again, didn't make the grief any less, didn't make the process any, it would be contradictory for me to say it didn't make the process any easier. Because in effect, it was easier because I was prepped
You
for
were
that one.
prepared,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like in Bobby's situation, I, for many years, um, was preparing for his death, but from, he had multiple sclerosis for 25 years, and which is a degenerative disease, something he was never going to recover from. As he got older, it would get worse. And we were very fortunate that we had him for 25 years. We, it's kind of odd in among myself and our family, have known several people with MS, and there has only been one out of probably almost a half a dozen people that I've come across that lived past the 25 years of having multiple sclerosis. And so I kind of throughout the years had prepared myself for that. That's how I was going to lose him, was because of that disease. Not that he was going to take his life.
Oh, the same thing like with Patrick. He lived at home. And I remember how many times I said, I'll be glad when I have my house, like I was ready to
Right.
be, truly an empty nester.
Right.
Not like that.
Not that
Not
way.
like that.
Yeah,
Not-
exactly. But we have a responsibility to live.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
And at times, and I've kind of had this, I think I'm past this a bit, but we do question, who am I?
Mhm.
What am I meant to do with my life? And especially in a situation like this, what do I do with this now?
Right.
I never, in my wildest dreams or nightmares, would have thought that I would have started annual fundraiser or started a nonprofit, the Bobby White Foundation, let alone be in front of a camera on this show.
I know, absolutely. And as we share about the show, and people, say the same thing. Never in my life did I think that I would be doing this.
And I fought it, the show part, for a while until I finally gave in to John.
It's kind of irresistible. It's kind of hard not to give in to John.
It's kind of hard not to give in to John, but and he appreciates and he knows how important this is, and this is why we're doing it. He also comes from a lived experience, and so he understands, and yeah.
And for clarification, for those who may not know, John Gaston, who is, he owns this TV show or this TV station, is, started out as a, professional colleague, has morphed into a, personal friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, pushed us to do this. And, we are, grateful, beyond measure.
Oh,
That he's
very much so.
given us this platform, and not just our platform, the other, platforms that, is made possible, through, this venue.
Through WeBeam TV and
Exactly.
Tampa Bay Multimedia, it's just, it's
Exactly.
great. So with our responsibility to live, you have to live not only for yourself, but for the precious person in your life who has died, to work on his or her unfinished work and to realize his or her unfinished dreams.
Right.
Well, as far as Bobby goes, he didn't like the spotlight. So, I don't. He's probably up there like, "What are you doing?" But I'm sure he's very proud.
In that your responsibility to live, I like what Dr. Wolfelt says here, where he goes, while it hurts to suffer lost love, the alternative is apathy, which literally means the inability to suffer. And it results in a lifestyle that avoids human relationships to avoid suffering. And when I read that, I both had a wow moment. I also chuckled. Um, the chuckle part of it is, those little moments where, as you're processing this, where you find humor. And I found humor in this. My neighbor across the street with this running joke where, he just insists that I'm getting married this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not dating, so therefore, and I'm like, it's like, I'm not actively, he was like, when you least think, when you least expect it. But this, that's sentence resonated with me for a moment because I had to ask myself, don't get me wrong, I'm content being single. I'm not, it doesn't bother me being single. Not that I avoid relationships or that I have an aversion, or, don't even approach me, guys. Don't even approach me. At the same time, it did make me think, am I single because I'm not really, I'm not actively seeking out a relationship? Or am I subconsciously sabotaging any, I don't want to say ability, opportunity for relationships because there's a bit of apathy in here. This is, I don't want to be super close to another person because I don't want to endure another loss. And even though, the loss of a relationship is not the same as losing someone by death, the grief, in some cases can be exactly the same.
Yeah.
And,
it can.
like I looked, I looked at them like, all right, Dr. Walford, what are you really saying here? Let me piece and parcel this. And I was like, wow, that's really, and even beyond romantic relationships, it also makes me think of, in personal relationships, like not, let me use my daughter for an example. Mind you, my children and I were always very close, very, very close to my children. And, besides the fact that my daughter lives an hour, there's an hour difference between our respective houses. She made a comment to me as we were talking, and I said, I come to your house a lot. What's up? You don't come over as often as you used to. And it was just one of those really didn't think about it kind of conversation, of just spontaneous conversation. And I was struck when she says, Mom, it's not that I don't want to come over. And it has, I want to phrase this, make sure that there is no misunderstanding in how I phrase this. It has nothing to do with you per se. It has everything to do with the fact that when I walk into your house, Patrick is on a shelf. He's not in his bedroom. He's not going to walk around the corner and say, hey, Beans. His nickname for, we used to call her Jean the Bean, so he called her Beans. Hey, Beans. And so even within, those really, like sometimes it's like, it's hard having a conversation with other family members, especially my, two other children, because it's like, I don't want to say something that is going to upset you, Mom. And then likewise, I'm like, oh, I get feeling it. I don't want to say something that's going to upset you. Or even, when Kira and I are, talking periodically, not that we tiptoe around each other. At the same time, in, the continued living relationships is I don't want to hurt or cause someone else any more pain or grief than either A, we're already going through, or unintentional grief, And, but the transformation continues.
Yeah, and I understand that too, because you know, besides the pandemic, even before that hit, with my sister-in-laws and my brother-in-law, they don't come over to our house, and as time has progressed, it's gotten less and less to not at all.
Right.
And I don't think I've even spoken with my brother-in-law in a couple of years. As, and my one sister-in-law, I did spend Thanksgiving with them, and my other sister-in-law, Bobby's youngest sister, Mary, she's actually going to be on the show in a couple weeks with us. And her and I converse probably more. But the other two, it's very little. And like I said, they don't come over to the house. And I can understand why. It's easier, I think it's harder for them to be there. But for me, it's easier for me to be there.
Right. And as, we're winding this out, it brings me to, where he says, carrying your transformation forward. Tomorrow is now. It is here. It is waiting for you. You have many choices in living the transformation that grief has brought to your life. And then the last, thing says, say yes to life and no to suicide. And I like what he said is, tomorrow is indeed now. And that, it's important for us to embrace this journey, that we're on. And, I say that not only for us, but anybody
For
who
anybody.
is dealing with, a suicide loss, we do the reminders, as, we end up in a show about, resources that are out there, the development of the purple folder.
Yes, we have the purple folder. We just delivered some to the Port Ridge Police Department and Growth and Recovery Counseling Center. Port Ridge Police Department has the new version, the updated version also. Of course, the foundation is a resource for the folders. We just had my dear friend Diane. The folders came in early, so Diane and I had a little stuffing party on Tuesday, and of course, there's the hotlines, the different suicide hotlines that are up there on your screen. If you know anybody that is having a hard time contemplating, if it's immediate danger, please call 911. There is help out there. There really is. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will have our new T-shirts, which will be another way for people to support the foundation and this program. That'll be the front of it, and then the back will have the foundation logo on it. So I'm going to read this last Survivors Bill of Rights. I have the right to move toward my grief and heal. Reconciling my grief will not happen quickly. Grief is a process, not an event. I will be patient and tolerant with myself and avoid people who are impatient and intolerant with me. I must help those around me understand that the suicide death of someone loved has changed my life forever.
Very nice words to that resonates.
And if anybody is interested in this book, please email the foundation, and we will get you the resources for this. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon also. I think is that where you got yours on Amazon? So I read this quite often, probably maybe once a month.
And speaking of Amazon, that's another way to support the foundation.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're like me, Amazon is my best friend. That's kind of my go-to when I order anything. But I like that, Amazon and platforms like it has a built-in feature that says you can support a charity of your choice. And,
right. You have to go to smile.amazon.com,
right.
and it will if you go to smile.amazon.com, it will, and you have an account, it will automatically pull your account into it, and it'll ask you if you want what charity of choice you want to support, and it'll stay there. So every time you order, just automatically a small portion of that purchase is 100% is donated to the foundation. There's a ton of charities on there. You have your choices. I hope that you at some point choose to support ours.
Absolutely.
So, and you can also do, do a fundraiser on Facebook, and 100% of those proceeds also will go to the foundation. That's another really good way to help support us. So again, we want to thank WeBeam TV. We want to thank Greg Schindler's State Farm Office for their fundraiser this month.
Kindness.
Kindness. Please be sure to go there and choose your level of donation, what you feel comfortable with. And hopefully next week we're going to have an important guest on here. I'm just waiting for the email back for confirmation. So please reach out to someone. If you even have an inclination, just reach out. And remember, there's always hope. And thanks for joining us.